engaging the community since 1970. This is WIS Awareness.
Good morning and thanks for joining me today. June is Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month, and you may have heard some big news in this arena. A new drug approved by the FDA called aducanumab for the treatment of Alzheimer's disease. It's a really big deal, kind of a breakthrough, the first drug on the market for this purpose in nearly 20 years. So this morning I want to bring in Dr. Macy Smith. There's Macy there. She is a gerontologist and licensed social worker of Diversified Training Consultants based right here in Columbia. Good morning, Macy.
Good morning, Leland. Thank you for having me this morning.
Happy to. So let's just talk about this drug real quick. Aducanumab. Again, big deal. First thing to hit the market in 20 years. Let's start with the cost of it, because there's always a conversation of accessibility, especially equitable access to drugs and medication. So this thing can cost $56,000 a year. You have to get treatment for it monthly if you want it to be effective, and that breaks down to about $43 or $400 a month. So that's obviously a huge price tag and a big barrier for a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely it is. Now, it is a breakthrough, a great breakthrough in terms of treatment for Alzheimer's disease, because the medications and the treatments we have on the market now, they're for the treatment of the symptoms of the disease. So the dementia, the memory loss, forgetfulness, things of that nature. So it is a huge breakthrough. It gives us a lot of hope. But when we look at the reality of the accessibility of the treatment or the drug, it is unattainable at this moment for many people. You talked about the price tag. Annually, it's about $56,000 a year. That computes to over $4,000 per month. And so for someone to be able to pay out of pocket for this life-changing treatment, we really have to look at that accessibility, because again, it's unattainable for many people, but the hope that we can get this medication covered through insurance or just some financial support is a hope that a lot of us advocates we have in terms of this breakthrough and it being available to most Americans.
It can affect anyone, of course, but we were talking about how the rates of infection and disease are significantly higher among African Americans, yes. And as far as caring for those with it, a lot of times African Americans find themselves in positions of having to do that with fewer resources and, of course, fewer or less money. So for that community in particular, why is this such a challenge, or has the potential to be such a challenge?
Yeah, so when we look at the numbers in terms of the effects of Alzheimer's disease, African Americans are twice as likely to develop the disease, more likely to care for their loved ones at home with limited resources in terms of financial resources, educational resources, and social support. And so when we look at the impact on African American communities and communities of color, although there is treatment available, when you can't access that treatment and you can't be a part of, healing a loved one that you actually see in your mind dissipating every day in front of your eyes, we have hope, but then we also have some despair, because, we look at it and we say, it's available, but why can't we have access to it? And so when we think about those types of effects, we have to be very responsible in the fight to end Alzheimer's. We have to ensure that all people have access to this medication and this treatment, and they can afford it and it's attainable. When we think about just having the information available, people need to be able to make informed decisions. So the treatment is available, it's available without controversy, with controversy. So, we don't know if this treatment is going to really slow down cognitive decline. It's developed to slow down cognitive decline for individuals who have early stage Alzheimer's or who have mild cognitive impairment to slow down that decline. But we don't know because of the controversy and the confusion around the positive outcomes. And so when we have all this information swirling, we have to be sure that our vulnerable populations, our communities who are at higher risk, have good, realistic factual information that is understandable so that way they can make informed decisions. And I'm not sure we're there yet.
The only way to get it right now is if you can afford to pay out of pocket. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and so that's, again, a huge price tag, and not just for African Americans, but for, sufferers of this disease in general. Do we really expect a lot to change for these people, given the barrier that, again, that price tag can be?
And we're hoping that CMS steps in and makes a decision as to whether or not Medicare is going to fund the drug. But right now, we just don't know. Typically, Medicare covers FDA medications, but we don't know at this point if this is going to be a covered treatment or drug for our Medicare recipients, who are 90% of the population who are living with Alzheimer's disease.
Right, right. Okay, so this is, again, obviously very exciting. There is controversy surrounding how it got to market, being passed by the FDA at the disapproval or the recommendation against that by the panel of experts that were kind of charged with evaluating the drug and its effectiveness. But that aside for just this moment, this is still pretty exciting to have a breakthrough like this, or just something new out there in the fight against Alzheimer's, and of course working towards a cure.
Yes.
I mean, I think most folks can agree on that.
Yeah, any sliver of hope is what we need. When people lose hope, they lose life. And so the fact that there is newfound energy and motivation and excitement around treatment for Alzheimer's disease, it's actually opening the gateway of other inventors and other treatments and medications around Alzheimer's disease. It's bringing about more robust awareness around the subject area. We can bring down more dollars and more funding for research to develop treatment, cures, and things of that nature. So the sliver of hope is absolutely a win for all of us in the fight to end Alzheimer's.
And so while there are some, again, controversy and some drawbacks to this whole process, I do want to point out that the Alzheimer's Association of South Carolina, or in general of our state, and the general organization that on a nationwide level, has come out in support of this. They issued a statement back in early June when this all first came out. Here's just a brief sliver of what they had to say. This approval is a victory for people living with Alzheimer's and their families. Alzheimer's Association President and Chief Executive Officer Harry John said. He went on to say this is the first, again, FDA-approved drug that delays decline due to Alzheimer's disease. This means individuals may have more time to actively participate in daily life, have sustained independence, and hold on to memories longer. We can expect longer the relationships we hold most dear, our families and friends. So that's obviously a very hopeful statement. We'll be right back here on Awareness. Welcome back this morning. All right, Dr. Smith, let's go ahead and get into kind of how this came to be. This was a drug that was years in the making, and it's gone through a lot of back and forth, but again, it's here on the market as of 2021, and it got there again after the panel of experts kind of charged with evaluating it and determining its effectiveness recommended against it. It was an 11-person panel, as I'm sure you know. 10 voted against it. One person voted as uncertain how effective this drug would be for patients. And I've even, in reading about this, saw two experts, one from, I believe, University of Maryland and one from University of Pennsylvania, who said they actually would not recommend prescribing this drug to their patients. So, I mean, that's definitely kind of eye-opening. Where do things stand now? What are you hearing about those who are in support of this and those who are, kind of not so sure or just flat out not in favor of this being on the market right now?
Yeah, it's unfortunate, Leland, that our community is divided when it comes to dementia experts, scientists, researchers, the medical community. We are divided. In fact, I've had a few families reach out to me about their doctors prescribing the medication or the treatment, and I've had to really break things down to them in terms of information so that way they know what to talk to the doctor about. But to date, none of my families have had the doctor prescribe this particular medication. And it's because of the controversy. You know, this is a very expensive drug. People want to know, who are funding this medication, that it has a high propensity to work. And at this point, we don't know that. And so when we think about individuals who would even qualify to receive this treatment, you can't just go to the doctor and say, I need a prescription for aducanumab. You have to be a candidate for it. So there are tests that have to be taken before you can even be considered for this particular drug. And it's through scans, and those scans, Leland, they have a price tag too. So you're talking about $5,000 to even determine if you are a candidate for this particular treatment. And so again, it's unfortunate that our community is divided, but again, we have to be very responsible in the way we share information and provide hope to people, because it has to be factual. And also, too, we don't know enough about the side effects. With every treatment, with every drug, there are side effects. We don't know what the side effects are. There are reports now that are revealing that it could be potential brain bleeds as a result of taking the medication. But here again, information is swirling around, and we don't really know in terms of what to expect if our loved ones, or if we were to receive this monthly treatment. Again, how long do we take the treatment? Monthly for how long? So it's just so many unanswered questions, but there is sliver of hope, and we really have to hold on to that. However, we have to be well informed.
And so tests are still underway with this drug. Even though it's on the market, they are still trying to, again, confirm its effectiveness, or just measure kind of what that would be or look like.
With this particular drug, they're still required to monitor, as you stated, to monitor the effectiveness of the drug. And you know, Leland, that goes back just to clinical trials in general. When we think about the African American community, there is a lot of hesitancy there when it comes to clinical trials and trying new things, because of historic experiences that we've had. And so I don't know the answer to that, and I don't know how the community is going to convince people to participate in the trial, especially, again, we cannot forget about the highest risk community, which are the African American community. So how are we going to appeal to them? Because in fact, African Americans don't participate in clinical trials as much as their Caucasian counterparts. And so are the treatments designed and developed for us? You know, will we sustain the highest effectiveness if we don't participate in the clinical trial? So all of that has to be considered, but that's an excellent point about that third phase, because this drug is still being monitored for its effectiveness.
I mean, that certainly seems a little backwards, doesn't it? I'm no, obviously, scientist or on the board of any FDA committee, but to have something already available but still technically be testing it to see if it works certainly seems a little backwards.
Yeah, but I'll tell you too, just in general with medicine, you know, our medications are constantly being reviewed or constantly being evaluated, because there are things that may have not even been considered. There could be anomalies out there. So medications are always being studied, but for this one to be a new drug, having the controversy in terms of not having overwhelming data of its positive outcomes and effectiveness, because you know, we don't know at this point if you remove the amyloid in the plaque, you know, is that going to cure it? Is that going to treat it? Is it going to slow it down? At this point, we don't know if the plaque is causing Alzheimer's or if Alzheimer's is causing the plaque. And so if the drug is able to remove the plaque, you know, is that going to treat Alzheimer's? And so that's what this is all about. But again, there is a sliver of hope. There is data to support that, some data to support that it does work, but there is not overwhelming data. But again, this opens the floodgates to other inventors and researchers and creators to really take it a step further in terms of treatment and a cure. Ultimately, hopefully, one day we will meet the first person who is a survivor of Alzheimer's disease, but it starts here.
And so with the approval of the drug, when the FDA decided to approve it and bring it to market, there were people who resigned
Yes.
from that committee. in light of the FDA's decision, because they felt they had given their recommendation based on their knowledge and expertise and scientific evaluation, and they felt like that was just disregarded, and so they didn't want to be connected or attached to the process anymore. What should the medical community on this issue make of that? More importantly, just patients who are, again, given, hopefully being given that sliver of hope, but I mean, that certainly does not look good.
No, it doesn't. It's very troublesome that you had 3 people to quit, in light of the FDA approval, and just basically they're feeling, based on reports, the complete disregard for not having that overwhelming data to support its effectiveness. That speaks volumes, and I think that should also be considered with all the other information and the data that we have, whether or not this medication should even be prescribed to certain populations. We have to be socially responsible. We have to be fiscally responsible when it comes to vulnerable populations, when it comes to our high-risk populations and our families. We just absolutely have to be responsible, and we cannot hold and retain information from people who need to make informed decisions. And so again, this is not an overwhelming bad thing, because it's not. It's a good thing. It gives us hope, but we have to better understand the limitations, the risks, and the barriers that come along with it.
Yeah, certainly not trying to rain on the parade, and certainly acknowledge this is a good thing and has a great potential, but I think it's also okay to be critical of something like this, especially when it's already come with the backdrop that it has.
It's important too, Leland, because the African American community historically receives disproportionate information, realistic, factual, understandable information, and we don't make informed decisions all the time. And one of the reasons is because the lack of complete, comprehensive, understandable information. And when we look at the way information is relayed these days with technology, in our rural communities where a lot of our African American families live, do they have access to broadband and internet and the information? Are they getting their information from somebody up the street? Is their information reliable? And so again, we don't need to paint a primrose path. Again, we have to give realistic information so people can make informed decisions.
You're absolutely right. Okay, a quick break again here. We'll be right back. And welcome back this morning. Macy, so, there's obviously the debate among the medical community and people like yourself, and also, experts at the FDA and on these boards and whatnot. But, bringing it back down to just your grandmother who has Alzheimer's, or maybe your parent who has it and you're their caregiver. What should they make of all of this? Not you as the caregiver. I mean, you're involved in this too, of course, but just the person who actually has the disease and, thinks this could be game-changing for me, and I'm so excited. What an opportunity. What should they make of this entire situation? That's
really kind of a loaded question. I think they should first be hopeful. They should be excited, because it is a hopeful time. Again, it opens the gateway to a lot of innovation around Alzheimer's treatment and care and a possible cure. And so it should be excitement. But after that excitement, you should couple that with information, being able to gather as much information as possible from reliable sources. Speak to your doctor, not a national doctor, not a television doctor, but speak to your doctor about the feasibility of you even being considered for the treatment. Understand what the side effects are, understand what the assessment opportunities are, what they look like, and to see whether or not this will be a perfect fit for you. Better understand the outcome of this particular treatment. How long should you be taking the treatment? What can you expect? So that information helps people, again, understand longevity in terms of whether or not they'll even be able to sustain this particular type of treatment long term. It gives them a sense of control. When we have control over our life, of our health, of our finances, it absolutely gives us the gumption and the motivation and the initiation that we need. But we can only have control if we have the right information. But also, too, this new treatment and this new drug should not supplant anything that we've already been doing or anything that you've already been doing. If you're living with mild cognitive impairment or early stage Alzheimer's disease, you still have to do things to preserve a healthy brain, and that's a healthy lifestyle. You still have to get education and training on just different engagement strategies and communication strategies. So it shouldn't supplant anything that you've already been doing. You should couple, the understanding of the new drug and the new treatment with things that we know are already working and hopeful in terms of preserving a healthy brain. Because Leland, what we know now about the progressive types of dementia is that 1/3 of those types of dementia could possibly be prevented with lifestyle changes. And so because we know that, these are things that we have within our reach and within our control that we can implement day to day.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Macy, for sharing today and kind of going through this. Much appreciated. Again, of course, a big deal to have this in the market now, and don't want to diminish that fact at all, but just still a very ongoing and active conversation around how it got to the market and its effectiveness and all of that. So just thanks for taking a few minutes to kind of discuss it with us today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll be right back. WIS has spoken with the Alzheimer's Association of South Carolina about aducanumab, which is being marketed and branded under the name Aduhelm, by the way. Here's what ALZSC's vice president had to say when asked about the FDA's process and how the drug got to market.
Our strong feeling is that the benefits here outweigh the risk. There is really compelling data from the existing clinical trials to show that for the first time, functional decline is measurably slowed. And that, again, is a hope that we have never had before. And for those individuals in early stages right now, why make them wait? This is something that can help them now.
I feel it's important to note that during a recent webinar on this new drug therapy, the Alzheimer's Association did make the following disclosure, saying, given the subject of this webinar, it is important to specifically disclose that 0.15% of total Alzheimer's Association revenue, a total of $525,000, was contributed by Biogen and Eisai in 2020. Those two companies are the makers of aducanumab or Aduhelm. You can read more at alz.com/transparency. Well, thanks so much for joining me for this conversation today. Hope you have a great rest of your morning.